Have you ever seen a headline so shocking that it made you stop scrolling in the middle of the night? A sentence that simply freezes your brain and makes you think, wait, what? Now imagine this. The President of the United States says he's going to govern another country, a sovereign country in South America, a country rich in oil, with an explosive history of politics and crises. And here's the most striking part. This statement isn't just an internet joke. It was actually said and echoed around the world. In the title of this video, we ask, did Trump say he would govern Venezuela? And has this happened before in history? That question is powerful for one reason. It hits two things that instantly grab attention: global politics and history repeating itself. But before we dive into what Trump actually said, and why this has dominated headlines in recent days, we need to understand what led the world to this absolutely surreal moment, because the truth is, to understand this shocking statement, you need to see the full picture. So stay with me. We'll break down the current situation. We'll look at what Trump really said, and we'll examine past moments when US leaders tried to control or govern other countries, and what happened next. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete understanding, and more importantly, a new perspective on what's really going on. If the introduction alone made you curious, hold on, things are about to get heavy in the next few minutes. Before talking about Trump governing Venezuela, we need to look at two things that help explain the bigger picture. 1. Why did Venezuela become a global focal point? Venezuela has faced political, economic, and social crises for years. Soaring inflation, shortages of basic goods, debates over electoral legitimacy, and a fragmented opposition have turned the country into an international flashpoint for decades. This internal crisis generated tensions with countries around the world, including the United States, which claims that the Venezuelan government under Nicolas Maduro violated democratic principles and human rights. So the real question is, when a country faces a massive crisis, what role should other nations play in its political destiny? That question takes us directly to the actions recently announced by the US government, to what actually happened in early January 2026. On January 3, 2026, something few people expected happened. US armed forces carried out an operation in Caracas that ended with the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Shortly afterward, during a press conference, President Donald Trump stated that the United States would temporarily take control of the country, using words that shocked strategists, diplomats, and world leaders alike. We are going to govern the country until we can carry out a safe, proper, and carefully managed transition. This is the kind of statement you don't hear every day. And the global reaction was immediate. Analysts began talking about imperialism, violations of sovereignty, and even deep historical comparisons. But before we get carried away by the shock of the moment, we need to understand one thing. This didn't come out of nowhere. And that's where the core of this video begins, comparing this situation with moments in US history when direct or indirect intervention in other countries was attempted. 1. What did Trump say exactly? Donald Trump stated that after Maduro was captured during the military operation, the United States would temporarily assume control of Venezuela until a safe and carefully managed transition of power could take place. He repeated that the goal was to protect the Venezuelan people, ensure stability, and create conditions for a leadership transition, despite many governments and experts pointing out that this violates internationally recognized principles of national sovereignty. This statement was widely reported and interpreted as an intention to directly control a Latin American country. Two important questions that must be answered. What does it mean to govern a country that isn't yours? Is this legal? And has this happened before? To answer these questions, we need to look at US history and some of its most controversial interventions. A. What has been the historical pattern? The United States has intervened in multiple countries throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Many of these episodes are still intensely debated by historians and foreign policy experts. One historical comparison frequently mentioned is the Monroe Doctrine, a policy from the early 19th century that essentially stated that foreign powers should not interfere in the Americas. What Trump jokingly referred to as the Monroe Doctrine is seen by critics as an attempt to revive an expansionist mindset. B. Invasions, occupations, and controlled governments. There are several moments in history when the US has supported coups, installed friendly governments, occupied countries after wars, and maintained political and military presence long after conflicts ended. Famous examples include Iraq 2003. The US led an invasion that toppled the government and then attempted to govern the country through transitional administrations and military occupation. This intervention resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, massive instability, and a deep political legacy. Germany and Japan after World War II. In these cases, intervention led to democratic reconstruction under international supervision, and both countries later became allies. These two cases highlight a critical difference: governance after total military defeat, combined with international agreements. In Venezuela's case, we are not talking about a country devastated by a world war. We are talking about a direct intervention in the government of a sovereign state, placing this situation in a very different and far more controversial category. 3. Comparisons and contrasts. Much of the global analysis points to one central idea. When a foreign power assumes administrative control over another country without a clear mandate, history tends to label it as occupation or imperialism. This has triggered strong criticism. Experts argue that Trump may be repeating past mistakes and underestimating the instability this could generate, drawing comparisons to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Other analysts describe the action as a form of modern neocolonialism, with the U.S. using its power to directly influence Venezuela's politics and economy. The core of this debate is simple, yet powerful. When one country begins to govern another, who truly decides that nation's future? Is it the will of its people? Is it the strategic interest of foreign powers? Or is it a complex mix of both? For what's happening now, the situation is evolving rapidly, and the world is watching closely. International reactions reveal rising tensions. The UN has convened a meeting to debate U.S. actions in Venezuela. Some sectors in Caracas denounced the intervention as a blatant violation of international law. At the same time, Venezuelan opposition leaders who support democratic change are negotiating with U.S. officials about the country's future. This highlights something essential. Even inside Venezuela, there are two competing narratives. One claims the intervention could bring democratic change. The other argues it is an attack on sovereignty that could make the crisis even worse. So here we are. Trump said the U.S. will temporarily govern Venezuela after a military operation that captured Maduro. This sparked shock and criticism around the world, with comparisons to past intervention failures and challenges, such as Iraq. Historically, when a superpower governs another country, the effects tend to be complex, long-lasting, and often controversial. This is not just another foreign policy story. It is a living chapter of world history being written before our eyes, with consequences that could echo for decades. And most importantly, you now have historical context, current facts, and the full picture of why Trump's statement is so extraordinary. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think will happen to Venezuela in the coming years? Could this become a new pattern of international intervention? Leave a comment below. Your ideas might appear in a future video.